If you can't tell, it's almost Christmas time, hence the blanket behind me, but it's almost Christmas time. And I'm trying to get this done for my nieces and nephews and kids. Um, so I'm just going to keep plowing away till I run out of time. We're at chapter 16. And here we go. He dug through the piles frantically, trying to find the contents of his desk in all the debris. It was starting to get dark. How very consistent it would be for him to figure it all out, but be far too late. There. He found the mouse skull. The lump of melted wax had gotten broken in half at some point. Now he just needed to find the other half. This doesn't fit at all, the door shoved open. Gav spun around, hiding the lump of wax behind his back guiltily, which was ridiculous, since it was his wax and it wasn't even the half that had the tiny key in it. He knew immediately that it looked terribly suspicious and tried to turn it into a casual hands clasped behind the back pose. Circo certainly had gained a great deal of confidence post-disclosure, if he was willing to burst into Gav's bedroom. Then again, he didn't have arms and probably couldn't have managed the door any other way. The garlic bulb costume had been lovingly constructed. There were eye holes covered in hand-knotted black lace, and a cheerful grin had been carefully embroidered on. 2 holes at the bottom allowed the wearer's legs to stick through, but it had no similar holes for arms. It simply puffed around the wearer to give the impression of roundness. Or it would have if Circo had not been distinctly too tall. The fabric strained at the crotch and the crown of his head, and from the outline inside it looked like the eye holes lined up more with his chin. "I'm sorry, my lord. You know I'll do my best I can with the material I have," Circo said, his voice muffled by the heavy fabric, "but I don't think this is going to work." "Well, take it off before you fall down the stairs," Gav said. He didn't have time for this. "I can't," Circo said mournfully. "I'm stuck." "Unhand her," demanded a new voice. They spun to see the doorway bristling with wickedly sharp weaponry. Behind the blades were 3 swordsmen, each adorned with an unreasonably large hat sporting enormous feathers, 1 green, 1 red, and 1 blue. Gav glanced down at himself. He hadn't had a chance to change back into dark wizard garb yet. He really did not have time for this. "I think you've taken a wrong turn, my lords." "Nonsense," said the one with the red feather. "We know full well the princess is disguised in that foul costume. Now release her at once, peasant, before you face my blade." He could have argued, but it would just be a waste of precious time. Hold still. He turned Circo to face his would-be rescuers and quickly unlaced the back of the costume. "You're going to have to duck a bit." Circo tried to pull the hood over the back of his head to free himself, but in trying he unbalanced himself and pitched forward. "I've got you, your highness." Greenfeather leaped forward. Circo had no way to fend him off with his arms trapped inside the costume. Greenfeather caught him neatly, turning Circo in his arms, and swept the top of the costume clear from his face. "Lovely damsel, who the hell are you?" Greenfeather dropped poor Circo, who couldn't get his arms free. Fortunately, the swordsman's feet broke his fall. "Now that's just rude," Circo complained, finally managing to free a hand and rub his back. "As you can see, gentlemen," Gav continued, as if the entire interruption had not occurred. He swept his arm around the bedchamber, which was thoroughly disguised by haphazard piles of junk. "You have just wandered into a storage space. I am afraid there really isn't anything interesting up here. If you are looking for the princess, you'd really be better off downstairs where the ritual is being performed." Bluefeather made a face. "By the time the ritual occurs, it will be too late. We must rescue her before she is at risk." "Ah, well, in that case," Gav said, herding them out the door, "you'll need to find her cell down in the dungeons." "We took a tour of the dungeons. There was no such cell," Redfeather protested. "Well, of course it wasn't on the tour." Gav rolled his eyes. "You can't expect a dark wizard to put his hostage on the tour. The cells are just off the secret passageway." "We didn't see a secret passageway," Redfeather protested. Greenfeather elbowed him in the ribs. "Did you look?" Gav raised an eyebrow. The three exchanged glances and hurried towards the stairs. You installed a secret passageway in the dungeons? Sirocco asked, pulling the guard suit down his knees. Was the one from the garden not enough? Of course we don't have a secret passageway in the dungeon. Gav started to paw through the piles again. Then what happens when they don't find it? Well, they'll assume it's very well hidden, Gav said. Now, go see if you can find someone shorter to fit in the suit, but leave the suit here for now, he added quickly. We don't need any more wrong assumptions. Are you changing? Sirocco asked, looking at his too unremarkable for a dark wizard trews. I really need to, but not until it's time to stop being unnoticed servant and start being unnoticed dark wizard, he said. No flames, then? Sirocco asked. I'd burn it for real if I thought Garebeetle would let me. Shame. It was always my favorite. I want Zarakonar to think I'm cowed anyway, because he was. A shiver ran down his back at the thought of having to actually face Zarakonar across a summoning circle. And what Zarakonar expected him to do. How did you do it all those years? Do what? Keep anyone from figuring out who you really were when faced with so many terrible things. He needed a hint, just a little one. You seem to have forgotten, Sirocco said, drawing himself up. I am a trained actor. With that bit of unhelpful advice, Sirocco headed out. Gav turned back to the desk to look for the key. Knock, knock. Sweetheart, are you decent? Without actually bothering to wait, Valvina sailed through the door. She had changed into something more practical, or at least more practical for her. The jewel-studded black velvet clung close to her arms, leaving nothing to trail, and had been cut into loose flowing pants instead of a skirt. The neck was high, covering her throat almost to the bottoms of her ears. Of course, a panel had been cut out along her collarbone to leave the curves of the tops of her breasts exposed. Beneath them, it was cut open again, exposing a generous portion of rib cage, with just a gathered band across the chest for modesty's sake. I just ran into 3 terribly charming young men who were not supposed to be on this floor. Yes, I know, Gav groaned. I'm on it. I'll put an ignore me spell on the staircase. Give me a minute here. I'm just digging out the components. Do you need help? She asked sweetly. No, he ground out. I'm sure Zarakonar has better things for you to do. I've got this. If you say so, she said in a tone that heavily implied that he did not, in fact, have this. But she left. Gav pressed the heels of his hands to his eyes. He wasn't going to have time to search for the key himself, not if he needed to go cast this spell. Everyone else was occupied, except one person, and a chicken. He was just going to have to take the risk. He didn't run, but he walked very briskly down to Alicia's cell and slipped in. She and Fiari were pacing at right angles to each other. They stopped as soon as he came in. I need you to take off your ring and come with me, Gav said quickly. I think I may have figured out how to get that collar off you, but I need your, or rather Ren's, help. That got her attention. She slipped off the ring, her features shimmered, and he was looking at his unremarkable apprentice once more. How do we do this? The we part warmed him to the soles of his feet, but he didn't have time to bask. He guided her back towards his bedroom. Do you remember the pile of stuff from my desk that got glued together when the candle melted? There was a gold key. Seriously? A key? She glared at him. And you're just thinking of this now? Well, it's not like it was labeled. Then how do you know what it is? The same way I always do magic. Nothing comes when I want it to, and then suddenly things make sense for no good reason. Fine, she said, shutting the door behind them. So let's use it. Well, there's the problem that I need your help with, he admitted. Her eyes narrowed. I can't find it. He gestured to the mess. It's in here somewhere, and I keep getting interrupted. I need you to find it. You're the only one who doesn't have something else they need to be doing right now. Yes, because I'm waiting to be led to my doom, she reminded him. And what happens if they come to retrieve me before I find the key? He swallowed. Then I'm in real trouble, so try to find it before then. She gave him a look of exasperation, but dove straight into the piles, which was about all he could ask for at this point. He grabbed a few spell components and made for the stairs. The key to a good ignore me spell was not trying for a full-on invisibility. It just suggested to the viewer that the thing they were looking for wasn't worth looking at, wasn't worth noticing. It didn't stand out like showier pieces of magic. Gav was starting to wish that he'd cast one on himself at the beginning of this entire mess. 3 parties of tourists wandered by while he set up. The first one took a solid 3 minutes of convincing to go away. For the next 2 sets, he had a new strategy. Just taking care of the roaches, my lord, he said cheerfully. Watch where you step. I don't think I swept up all the shells from the last batch. They scattered before he could get any farther. It was a shame he couldn't use it on Zarakonar. It was the most effective charm he could remember casting, and it didn't even use magic. As soon as the spell had been successfully laid, he dashed back up the stairs to his bedroom. Any luck? Not yet. Alicia shook her head. Leave that pile alone. I've already gone through that. It's like old times, he said ruefully. Old times a week ago, she answered, still digging. You know, for a bit there, I thought you might have liked me, just a tiny bit, he said, and then tried a self-deprecating smile. It came out wobbly. I liked learning magic, she said, and then reluctantly, I liked being treated as someone who was promising and wasn't a disappointment. If things had been different, I would have enjoyed having you as my apprentice, he said. Was there really anything that could have been hiding in this mess of memories, in his missing memories, that he could have offered her that she would have accepted as an explanation? Nothing could have justified Garvarax's choices. It was easier to think when she wasn't mad at him, and his own anger wasn't roused in response. Unfortunately, that just made it harder to fool himself. The pile by the window was still undisturbed. He lifted a cracked alembic off, trying not to break it farther. If things had been different, I would have enjoyed that too, she said. She smiled sadly. He wasn't sure how to respond to that, but the clatter of feet this time gave him enough opportunity to face the door before it opened. Throck here, Throck announced cheerfully. Wonderful, Gav said. Why? Going to wear the garlic suit, Throck said proudly. 8 extra garlic. Am in character, like Sarako in no time. Gav had to pause for a moment as the garlic breath rolled over him like a runaway boulder. He felt about as flattened. Very attentive to detail. Take that! Gav heard the bowstring twang before he could react. Not again! But Throck moved much faster than Garebeetle had. He tackled Gav, knocking him to the floor before bouncing back up. The bard, with the flowing gold hair, was already aiming a second-hand crossbow. Not second-hand crossbow, but like there's 2 crossbows and he shot one, now he's shooting the other. Second-hand crossbow, and Throck threw himself at the bard even as the second string twanged. Throck grunted as the shaft embedded itself in his thigh. The bard yelped as the 2 pitched over, and then yowled as Throck yanked the bolt out of his own leg and slammed it into the bard's. Elvenar! Alicia snapped. What? The bard's head came up. Throck, stop, Gav demanded, before the surprisingly efficient goblin could rip out the young man's throat. Apparently, Throck was not as unqualified for his position as Gav had assumed. Do I know you? Evanar demanded, whether unaware or uncaring at how close he'd come to a very short life of throatlessness. He shoved Throck aside. Get off me, you foul beast. Of course I'm your... Alicia stopped herself, and then an odd expression crossed her face. Your loyal subject. A simple chambermaid. Your Highness, we need to get you out of here. Not without my sister, he grunted. He tried to straighten his leg and hissed as the pain started to overcome his adrenaline. You love her that much? Alicia's face softened. I guess, Evanar replied. He grabbed the shaft and tried to pull on it, and immediately chickened out. Mostly I need to prove my worth to my father so he sees that I'd make a better heir than Ebenard. Ebda, Eb, Ebedard. Ebedard. You don't see precious Ebedard risking his skin for the honor of our family, do you? Allow me, Gav said, before Evanar could stop him. He grabbed the bolt and yanked, not particularly caring how much it hurt the prince. Ah! Evanar slapped Gav on the back of his head. You clumsy oaf! You're not going to believe this, Alicia said, holding something up. Now you find it? Gav slapped the prince's hand down on the wound. Fortunately, it wasn't all that deep or anywhere near the artery. Here, get it out of the wax. Alicia tossed it to him and started ripping up one of Gav's nightshirts. Gav caught it clumsily. The key was in there all right, but it was buried deep in the wax. He tried chipping away at it with a nail. This was going to take forever, and they most definitely did not have forever. Alicia was on her knees, bandaging the wounded. Gav noticed that she'd started with Throck instead of her brother. Can't you just melt it with a fireball or something? She asked. Not with Zaracona right down the hall, Gav fretted. He'll sense a spell going off this close to his working. I might be able to get away with it downstairs with the rest of the adventurers. Hey, kid, how'd you get past the ignore me spell and get up here? Evanar sniffed. Such things might work on peasants, but princes are more discerning. Alicia gave him a look. I don't have to bandage your leg, you know. And the white wizard Arthano gave me a brooch to see through enchantments, he said sulkily. If I could get my laboratory set up again, I could melt it out with hot water, Gav said, turning back to Alicia. We don't have that kind of time, Alicia reminded him. Gav blew out a breath. All right, here's the plan. You finish bandaging this idiot. I'll head down to the kitchen and melt this thing out on a fire. I'll meet you, the two of you, in the garden, and we'll get you out through the tunnel. And then? And then we'll run like hell, Gav said. Throck, you warn the rest of the castle folk. Everyone clears out while the adventurers are creating a distraction. Throck scratched his head. If the wizards ask why pretty apprentice lady is helping the hero? Gav swore. He's right. They can't see you. All right, Alicia, Ren, you wear the garlic suit. You're shorter than Sirocco. It should fit. Very dignified, Alicia said. For a moment, he was afraid she would argue. He had a sudden flashback to the first time he'd asked her to follow a plan, the night they'd turned Fiari into a rooster. He had been so proud of himself for manipulating her into doing what he wanted. Now he didn't have time. He didn't even want to manipulate her. He just wanted her to be safe. Please, just be safe. She reached her decision. All right, go. I'll see you down there. Gav didn't have time to sag in relief. He just nodded and slipped out the door, tucking the lump of wax into his sleeve. He managed to make it past the workroom and down the stairs without anyone noticing him. At the base of the stairs, he found two unconscious adventurers, both wearing gargoyle masks and black cloaks. It must be nearly time for the ceremony. Given that the masked wizard had a sleeping dart in his neck, and the masked thief clutched a blowgun and the melting remains of an energy-draining net spell, he felt confident guessing that each one had assumed the other to be part of the conspiracy. He was stepping over them when he heard footsteps in a familiar voice. Oh, this is just delightful, Zaxis said as he started to turn the corner. I haven't had so much fun since the time the giant hunting spiders got loose at the temple festival. Gav grabbed the mask off the sleeping thief and tied it hastily on. Zaxis and his paramour turned the corner. Oh, look, another one. You're going to be late. Can't have that, young man. You'll be so disappointed. I think I'll look for the princess in the kitchen, Gav said, trying to head in that direction. I'm sure no one's looked there yet. Nonsense! You don't want to miss all the excitement? Zaxis wrapped an arm around his shoulders, turning him around. The older wizard grabbed the dark cloak off the dart victim and slung it over Gav's shoulder. Now, this way. Gav found himself unwillingly propelled in the direction of the throne room. He was still trying to think of a way to slip away when Zaxis yanked open the door and shoved him in and slammed it behind him.